Well, pilots, after almost 30 years, we finally got ourselves a mainstream standalone starfighter game in Star Wars Squadrons. Now the question only remains, is it any good or decent at the very least? Well, we'll find out soon enough. Let's first start on what I think makes Squadrons a good game. For many, their first experience here will be playing in the campaign, and I have to say this is where I had the most fun in. Surprisingly, the levels are pretty varied and don't feel too repetitive as I was originally worried about. I also like the swapping of point of view between the New Republic and the Empire, as it shows you that even the war in Star Wars isn't black and white. Personally though, I would have preferred had the story taken place before the Battle of Endor, as I enjoyed playing the Rebel Alliance and the campaign prologue more than the New Republic. Which I know is a weird thing of me to say at first glance because I am a New Republic stan, but sadly the New Republic in this game is the early New Republic and not the real established one from the sequel trilogy. You know, the badass New Republic. So instead of the Defense Planet Forces, sweet unique pilot suits, and T-85 X-Wings, we get the Rebels simply pretending to be the New Republic instead. Probably the most boring faction in Star Wars, but it is what it is. Now, had we got a story featuring the New Republic versus the First Order, then boy, that would have been spicy. Anyways, for the gameplay itself, yeah, it's definitely not a copy and paste of Starfighter Assault from Battlefront 2. Sure, there are some similarities between the two, as they do run on the same exact engine, but there's way more depth and control in Squadrons, which is a huge plus in this comparison. Starfighter Assault was fun, but it was far too basic and arcadey, while Squadrons instead focuses on making things a bit more complex, and giving you more control behind the wheel, so to speak. The learning curve is steep at first, but once you manage to catch on, then man, you'll be having a great time, at least in the campaign. Other things to point out are the great visuals because yeah, Squadrons looks and feels fantastic. The beautiful, vibrant colors to each level really make you enjoy what you're seeing on the screen, especially when compared to the dark and gloomy look in Starfighter Assault. The game also comes loaded with offline fleet battles and a practice mode, which is fantastic for offline players, and oh, let's not forget about VR too, because this is where, in my opinion, Squadrons really thrives in. I had an absolute blast playing Squadrons in VR, and any diehard Star Wars fan needs to try Squadrons in VR at least once because it's seriously something special. That all said, Squadrons is by no means all sunshine and rainbows, and does have its fault. Well, faults, and quite a bit of them. Well, more than a bit. Okay, a lot to be blunt, so let's just jump straight into the negatives of the game. First, regarding the customization, let me just say, who in their right mind thought that the player icons looked good the way they are? Because they're simply tragic, as they only show your helmet but not your actual outfit, rather instead putting everyone in a generic brown t-shirt than their actual pilot gear. And the result, you instead look like some dude cosplaying than being a real pilot. And don't get me started on the face options for both sides, which are pretty dire too. You only get one face per gender and race, so one white guy face, one black guy face, one brown guy face, and yeah, you get the deal. And it's especially bad for the New Republic, since everyone there for some reason looks like a stoner from the 70s. Not to mention there's a serious lack of alien face options too, which sucks as I was really looking forward to making my own Trandoshan pilot, but now I can't. Why they couldn't just port the existing faces from Battlefront 2 while they did for a lot of other things here, I'll never know. Other than that, the actual pilot and ship customization isn't bad. Sure, I would have loved to see more X-Wing helmets than the few we did get, because for some reason we get a ton more Y-Wing helmets instead, which are less iconic, but whatever. As for the campaign, the writing isn't good here, especially with the characters. Most of the characters are boring and not very compelling. I mean, there are some good ones, but mainly not great. I liked Kyo and Frisk for the New Republic, and Varko and Shen on the Empire. But other than them, most of the other characters are all one note, especially those who keep repeating the same thing over and over again. I mean, you have one on the New Republic who only keeps droning on that her parents construct Imperial ships, yada yada. And then you have another on the Empire who won't shut up about bringing back the Imperial Senate. I mean, come on. It gets old fast. But my main gripe with the campaign is with how much canon inaccuracies it contained, which if you've watched me enough, then you'll know that's a no bueno for me. Unfortunately, motive writer Mitch Dyer values adding more SJW elements into the story in an attempt to pander to the woke crowd. And honestly, I don't even care about that. But what I do care is putting precedence of your agenda over the cost of the canon lore, which is what Star Wars is all about for a lot of us. And that just really ruins the experience and sucks out the enjoyment from the campaign, at least for me. Anyways, I'll probably just make a separate video on all the Squadrons lore inaccuracies I spotted, as I know only a niche crowd actually care about that stuff. But to keep it short, the campaign is nowhere near as long as most would have liked for it to be, and abruptly ends with little feeling of any accomplishment. Especially for the Imperial campaign, it just ends. In total, I managed to beat the campaign in about 4 hours, but to be fair, I was playing at a lower difficulty in order to film the content. So you could probably stretch it to another hour if you play at a higher difficulty. But that's still too short for the people who are getting the game just for the single player experience. There's also a point in the game where Frisk asks if you want to play a game of Sabacc, which I was surprised but happy for a second, thinking, whoa, that's unexpected, but sure, I'm down for it. And it then turns out that no, it was just an empty invitation, which is disappointing. Considering the amount of card games Frisk keeps inviting you to, or in general talks about, it would have been nice to play at least one of them as a side game. You know, something fun to do in the campaign outside of just doing mission after mission. Alright, now let's talk about the negatives of multiplayer, which in my opinion is the roughest part of the whole game and can give you some of the worst experiences possible in gaming. There are only 2 game modes to play: Dogfight mode, your run-of-the-mill team deathmatch of no objectives, or Fleet Battles, the game's main flagship mode that sees you try to take out the other team's flagship while defending your own. On paper, these modes seem fine, but in execution, well, that's another story. Dogfights, in my opinion, is the most fun mode to play in the game. It's simple, has no clutter, and straight to the point. My only problem with dogfights is that whenever someone does leave, the game doesn't exactly tell you who left, giving you a false sense of security thinking that maybe it was someone on the other team, when really it turns out it was one of your teammates, and then you keep getting double teamed throughout the entire game, and yeah, fun. And the worst part about it, you're close to guaranteed to see people drop in almost every game, so not a great experience at all. Not to mention the gameplay is similar to Starfighter Assault and Battlefront 2, where whoever locks onto the other guy first, then most of the time they'll win out. And if you constantly have 2 ships on your tail, then you're Dunsky. As for fleet battles, then yeah, I'm not a fan of it. It's way too long, and majority of the time when you're trying to find a target, you only get the AI instead of real players, and it's just not all that fun. Honestly, I find it boring and rather tedious with the same thing over and over again, especially if those darn annoying Corvettes. Take out the enemy Corvette, okay. Then a few minutes later, take out the enemy Corvette again, okay. Then again, and again, and again, yada yada yada. You know, it's just too much. Give me dogfight mode any day over fleet battles, where I can face off against real players than just mainly the AI. Other than that, there isn't much more to multiplayer, which is a bummer, as I think one more mode would have been really crucial to have here. There are also some major multiplayer sins committed in this game too, like for example not having private matches or clan support. Especially for a game that touts on you building your own squadron, aka clan. But the sad reality is that nope, this is pretty much false advertising by Motive and EA. You can't actually create your own squadron, so every single game is literally just Titan versus Vanguard Squadron. Normally, I'd be fine for that to be the case when playing games with just random people, but you should be able to play with your clan against other clans with original squadrons. Also, I noticed a lot of people apparently don't understand what clan support actually means, at least from my last news video where I mentioned it. And no, it has nothing to do with just playing with your friends, not at all. The ideal clan support here would have been to actually, I don't know, maybe create your own squadron. Like for example, I would call it Silo Squadron and then everyone in the game would see that. You would also be able to create your very own squadron's logo and put it on your ship too if you want. Then you can also organize practice sessions with your squadron to go over different formations or maneuvers, and then play ranked games against other clans. Basically think of Pro Club mode in FIFA, but in squadrons. Lastly, I want to talk about some of the numerous bugs I've encountered that really dampened my experience playing squadrons. Just to name a few, there would be challenges not registering, forcing you to do the same ones again, people killing you without properly aiming at you, sometimes the game just randomly not wanting to work properly at all, and skipping the campaign briefings along with everyone going mute for some reason, I don't know. Not to mention, this game takes forever to load too. Seriously, even its own menu struggles to load in, that's not a good sign. Suffice to say, Squadrons is not coded very well at all. Also, I'm not sure if this is even a bug or maybe just intentional, but every single briefing session I got into was only 2 seconds long. Like, what is that? That's not even enough time to try an emote, much less to actually go over a plan with my teammates. Seriously, Motive, what's the point of briefings if they're this short? Also, if I may add, the ability to not see the platforms of crossplay players is also stupid. Again, come on Motive, even Warzone allows for the small but simple detail. Overall, Squadrons does have plenty of good aspects to it. It looks great, plays great, and has good offerings for the offline player. And there's surely enjoyment to be had with the campaign too. And the VR experience alone is mind-blowing, it's just the best part of the game for me. That and dogfight mode when people aren't dropping in games. But at the same time, its faults seriously outweigh the good here, at least in my opinion. With its blatant canon inaccuracies, terrible glitches, cookie-cutter customization, lack of content, disappointing multiplayer experience especially with fleet battles, and a lack of private matches or clan support. So, keeping that all in mind, I honestly can't in good conscience give Squadrons a score higher than 5, well, let's give it 6 out of 10. Which in no way means it's a bad game, but just average. It's targeted at a niche crowd, and I just happen to not be in it, I guess. Which, mind you, is fine. Personally, I enjoyed the original X-Wing vs TIE Fighter far more back in the day, but to be fair, I was a kid back then, so tastes change, I suppose, I don't know. No matter how much I tried liking this game, I don't know what to say, it just didn't do it for me. Like I said, the core gameplay is great, and I had the most fun playing in VR, which is really what helped the score go from a 4 or a 5 to a 6 for me. But everything else, man, I don't know what to say. Now as for whether you should buy Squadrons or not, that depends. If you're not big into starfighting and don't have a VR headset, then I'd recommend skipping out on Squadrons. If you just care about the campaign, you can watch the whole game movie for free on my channel, and save yourself the frustration that comes with the online multiplayer especially. That said, if you do love starfighting, then you'll have one hell of a time in Squadrons. Especially in VR, like I can't say enough good things about that. But at the end of the day, the core gameplay of Squadrons is fun. It's just everything else that brings it down for me. Maybe with future updates that will all change, but for the time being, I don't see myself coming back to this game. At least, not without a VR headset. This is N7 signing off.